Watashi no nami wa Kobugakuze desu. Hello, my name is Kobugakuze. Let's cut the small talk, you hear me? What's a kanji? What's a kanji? Japanese has 3 writing systems: Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji. Each one has its own reason for writing Japanese characters. Hiragana and Katakana are basically the alphabet for Japanese. Hiragana is used to write native Japanese words, verbs, conjugations, and to provide punctuation for kanji. Katakana, on the other hand, is used to write foreign words and onomatopoeias. When learning the different writing systems, it's recommended to start with Hiragana, and then Katakana, and then Kanji. I wouldn't spend too much time on Hiragana and Katakana just because you might get burnt out studying just alphabets. And I think that the more that you see those characters over time, the more you'll start to remember them and familiarize yourself with those characters. And the big thing is you don't want to get burnt out before you even start learning Japanese, right? Hi. As far as my progress goes, I've already learned Hiragana and I've started on kanji characters, but I haven't actually started on katakana yet, but just because I haven't came across it, so I haven't needed it. But I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. I would probably learn that in the very beginning, but I'll get to it soon. The time has come. Play the trumpets, sound the alarms. We finally have come to the part where I tell you about kanji. The wait is over. So kanji are characters that originated from Chinese. They are the nouns, verbs, and adjectives for Japanese. There's actually 2 pronunciations for kanji characters, which can kind of get confusing. But those 2 pronunciations are unyami and kunyami. Unyami being the Chinese-based pronunciation and kunyami being the native Japanese readings. Honestly, I don't really know the difference just yet, but when I'm on apps like Wanikani and it tells me to learn one of them, I honestly just assume that that's the most popular pronunciation for that kanji, so that's the one that I learned. I'll eventually probably need to learn both pronunciations, but when that time comes, we'll cross that bridge. The building blocks for kanjis are called radicals, and every kanji has at least 1 radical. An example would be a radical tree. Now let's look at the kanjis trees and forest. You can see the radical tree in the kanjis for trees and forest because it is the building block. There's something crazy like 80,000 kanji, and honestly, you're not going to remember a fraction of that. But once you learn all the radicals and you start to learn a little bit more kanji over time, you can start to use context clues just like English to figure out what unknown kanjis mean. Another thing that you want to use is something called mnemonics, which will actually help you with memorization. Mnemonics are letters, ideas, and associations that you can use when remembering something. One example that I took from Wanikani is I'm standing next to a river that's used as a car wash. So now every time I think of river, I think of car wash, which actually helps me with the pronunciation, which is kawa. Japanese also uses a different sentence structure than English. Japanese uses a subject, object, verb sentence structure compared to English, which uses a subject, verb, object sentence structure. If you want to learn more about Japanese sentence structure, I actually made a YouTube short about that recently, so if you want to take a look at that, it'll definitely help you out. Another thing that's different about Japanese is subjects are actually omitted. What that means that if you're talking in Japanese to someone and the subject is already clear, then you would actually just leave the subject out of the sentence. This is because Japanese is a topic prominent language, unlike English, which is subject prominent. What this means is that in Japanese sentences, the topic actually matters more than the subject. So in a Japanese sentence, you would put more emphasis on the topic than the person or thing that you're talking about. Another thing about Japanese that if you want to refer to someone, it's actually more common to use their name than a third-party pronoun. Even if you repeat this in concurrent sentences, you can do so without sounding redundant. Also, using the subject I in sentences repeatedly can be seen as self-centered or over-assertive, so let's avoid that. Another thing about Japanese, which I think is kind of cool, is it's a Mor Time language. What this means is when you're saying a word, all characters take up the same amount of time. This is different from English, which is a stress time language. Let's take the word opportunity, for example. When you're saying the word opportunity, you put a greater emphasis on to than the rest of the characters. Opportunity. One thing that I'm doing, which I think is pretty helpful and I would recommend for others, is that I'm learning simple sentences and catchphrases in Japanese. Simple phrases that I'm talking about would be like arigato, sumimasen, and ohayo gozaimasu. Doing simple things like this every day can actually make you feel like you're progressing in the language, even if it's slow, which can definitely be motivating to keep studying and practicing. And this actually brings me to my next point. At some point, you're probably going to get imposter syndrome, and that's okay. This is the feeling that you're not good enough no matter how much progress you make in something. Some days might feel discouraging and intimidating because you've learned these words before, you should remember them, but it's a different language. It's literally a different language, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. And my suggestion for that is you have to show yourself some grace. You're learning a different language, and that just doesn't come overnight. Just keep trying to make progress, even if it's a little. Whether you study for 5 minutes a day, or 5 hours a day, just be happy that you're moving in the right direction. Another thing that I'd recommend is if you can, try to find a Japanese native speaker to talk with. They can help you with mispronounced words or questions that you might have. But even if you can't find a native Japanese speaker, I do encourage you to say the phrases and sentences that you learn out loud so you can further ingrain them into your brain. And at the end of the day, all of these tips and tricks are just what I seem to find helpful. When you start learning Japanese, you might have a different way of doing things, and that's perfectly okay. My one recommendation though when learning Japanese is make it fun. Whatever you find fun, learn ways to bring Japanese into that, and it'll definitely be more memorable than learning things online or reading out of a textbook. I believe I covered most of the basics. Together we'll keep trying to learn Japanese in 100 days. I hope to see everyone in the next video where we'll continue to learn more about basic grammar and vocabulary. Itadakimasu, or see you later. Peace.